president's control, subject only to, as has happened here, arguably, improper purpose and it being the possibility of obstruction. Ditto, by the way, on the Booker bill. There are going to be constitutional arguments on either side, notwithstanding the precedent that the senators rely on. And I actually think if it passes, this will all kind of play out at the district court level in the first instance, and whether the district court will enjoin the bill or not until it goes up. Because if the district court says, let's keep it as it is, that law's in place, that'll be 4, 5, 6 months till the Supreme Court decides. That's 4, 5, 6 months for Mueller to really make a lot of hay.
Yeah, that's a very good point about in sort of concrete terms.
Yeah.
Is there even a legislative statutory solution to this, Jennifer?
Right. I mean, some legal scholars argue, Alan Dershowitz is one, and then a lot of them on the right argue that the president has a constitutional power under Article 2 to fire anyone in the executive branch, essentially, so that you can't undermine that power by statute or by any other reason. So that will be the battle if this gets passed. They'll be duking it out in court.
So another piece of legislation to try to sort of, again, this legal gamesmanship to protect. Eric Schneiderman wrote a letter to New York lawmakers urging state lawmakers to consider to close New York's double jeopardy loophole to prevent those pardoned by the president from evading potential state prosecution. Harry, what do you think of that?
Well, my understanding of that loophole is that it only applies as double jeopardy would once somebody has actually stood trial. So if there's now Schneiderman knows better, Jennifer probably knows better being from New York, but my sense of it is it comes into play only when somebody is first put in jeopardy in the federal system. But if that happens, it would apply to many of the crimes, the very financial crimes that it looks as if Cohen, Manafort, and others are going to have to stand trial for.
So it attaches as soon as someone either pleads guilty or a jury is sworn in a trial.
Right.
So Flynn...
You're saying double jeopardy
Gates,
does.
Correct.
Right.
So Flynn, he's already pled. Gates has already pled. So for them, if they're pardoned by the president, then the New York double jeopardy statute would prohibit Schneiderman or any other New York prosecutor from bringing charges against them.
And so this would rectify that in the view of Schneiderman.
It would. So, and New York is along with about half the states with a stricter double jeopardy policy than is strictly necessary. So there's no constitutional reason or other reason that they can't pass this and scale back that extra protection.
It's interesting to watch everyone try to figure out, how to sort of shore up all of this. And then at the same time, there's these civil suits happening. And one thing that happened today was Karen McDougal was released from her settlement with AMI, American Media Inc., which is the parent of National Enquirer, basically saying you can tell your story. And I wonder, do you see that as having effect on everything that's happening in the sort of lane of Michael Cohen and Robert Mueller, Harry?
Totally. It's quite a story, really. Everyone has been focused to date on Mueller, understandably. He's got the big guns. He can really, bring the biggest charges against Trump. But in the meantime, Trump is fighting and losing on these different fronts in individual courts where he has to, in fact, stand in front of the law, and the law bites back and says, look, I don't care if you're the president. And so far, Judge Wood, Judge Otero, and I think McDougal, the National Enquirer, read the writing on the wall. These, what we had seen as sort of nuisance suits, in fact, are proving very potent, especially if Cohen is right, by the way. That's a fact question, that the Stormy suit actually was instrumental in the search warrants being served on Cohen.
And Karen McDougal's lawyer, as I just learned from looking at the return underneath the monitor here, is going to be on Rachel Maddow. So I'm going to watch that. Harry Littman and Jennifer Rogers, great to have you both. Next, after the bizarre 72 hours of back and forth over whether the White House is in fact enacting Russian sanctions, the president halted his departure from the press conference with Prime Minister Japan to weigh in on the public feud. That story in 2 minutes. Bashar al-Assad in the wake of the Syrian government's chemical weapons attack on Syrians in a rebel-held town, as the U.S. alleges they did. Now, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, announced the sanctions on Sunday. But then when the president saw her comments on TV, he reportedly grew angry and yelled at the television. The White House then insisted there were no new sanctions, throwing Haley under the bus, claiming she had just been confused. Tonight, at a press conference with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Trump offered a cryptic response when asked about the sanctions.
sanctions on Russia. We'll do sanctions as soon as they very much deserve it. We will have, that is a question. There's been nobody tougher on Russia than President Donald Trump.
Joining me now, someone who's been all over the story, MSNBC political analyst Philip Rucker, White House bureau chief of the Washington Post. So lots of press.